Welcome to Archean, episode 5 of the Cargo Challenge. And in the previous episode, we went out and gathered some aluminum and started making some propellers. You have 4 there. And now in this episode, we're going to start the process of constructing a submarine. So I wasn't quite sure initially where I'm going to put this, so I decided to go ahead and just stick it right next to the other base. One solution, I could have started the construction in the water and then sort of built it while I was in the water. I thought about putting a platform up with hinges on it, so I built on the platform, have the hinges sort of rotate and drop it into the water. I could have also dropped that initial frame down, put a floor on it, put an anchor on it, and then sort of build out sort of like a temporary structure and have it basically over the water. And then basically the submarine would have this little extra part on it just for construction purposes. And once it was done, just go ahead and disassemble the stuff on the beach here. So here I'm trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do here. So the overall plan is it's a 1x3 as far as the wall size structures. And I'll go ahead and I'll actually going to use symmetry this time. Now, I clicked the symmetry and nothing showed up. That's because I don't have a not in block edit mode right now. So once you turn that on, and not that one, but when you have the construction tool selected, then you'll see the symmetry. When you don't, you don't. So I decided to get slightly more fancy on this and sort of give a slight edge to it. And we'll bring it out a little bit. Replicate that part, and then we'll just extend this out a little bit. And I'm trying to figure this out as I go, because if I built another one in the future, it would be a bit faster. So I decided to extend this out a little bit first. And then with that. Now, part of the reason for doing it this way and building sort of border around the base there, if I have an issue with weight, and this is all using composites right now, so if the craft is a little too light, which is most likely will be, I can always just remove those bottom wall pieces, more like floor pieces, which are 3 by 3 meters each, and just remove those and replace them with concrete versions. Add a little more weight there. So I'm giving the side a little bit of a curve there, or slope there. The front and back will be flat. Little markers there. So what I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to put 4 propellers on this unit, and they're going to be on the side on pivots. So basically they'll be able to rotate 360 degrees. Also, it's possible to change the pitch of the props. So that's basically will be control, is the ability to obviously control the how fast the propellers are moving, controlling the pitch. So if I want to reverse without changing the direction, I can do that by just changing the pitch. and be able to rotate the propellers. And then given that combination, that allows you to do various maneuvers. My plan for this version is to use the keyboard only and sort of work out different mapping for different functions. So like for up and down, in that case, what I'll do is if you shift is up and control is down, same as if your jetpack's turned on. So in that case, to say if you're going to go up, then I will rotate the props straight up and turn them on and go up. And to go down, I decided to still rotate the props up, but go ahead and invert the pitch, and that would push the craft down. And the reason for, you could rotate them either direction for this. And the reason for not rotating down is that because there's not a lot of clearance there, and so I'm trying to keep it, maybe just a sliver of being realistic. To go forward, then you just have the props all pointing forward, and then go ahead. Basic position I build them in will be sort of its inherent zero position. So to go forward, just make sure they're in their normal position and fire up the props. To go backwards, I just have to invert the props. I don't need to flip them over, although it might be more interesting if the props turn around the other direction when you go backwards. But it probably takes longer. You gotta wait for the rotation to happen, so most likely I'll just rotate the props. We'll play it out and see which one's faster. If you crank up the pivots parameters, they move pretty quickly. So here I am sort of trying to figure out how to mount the pivot. I had to build a little extra there just so I could mount it where I want to, and I can remove the little helper blocks afterwards. Now, the symmetry doesn't work for components, only for blocks. Now I'm trying to figure out how far to go out and how to attach the propeller. So what my initial thinking was, it'd be the first time I've ever attempted to attach propellers, I would just pop it on the side like that and center it. But I wanted the controls on the other side. I mean, not controls, the ports for the power and data and all that. I want it facing the sub. And I can rotate in these two directions, but I just couldn't rotate it the other way around. So I'm like, how do I get this thing to do what I want to do? I want that. And I'd say, well, I want like that, but I want to rotate it around 180. So the prop still faces forward, but the port's on the other side, and then kind of shuffle down a little bit. And so it sort of sticks out like that. But that just wasn't going to happen. And so and you go, okay, and there's no mechanism I can rotate it. I can rotate it that way, but not the other way. So I spent some time kind of playing around with the prop here and see how I can get it mounted. Sort of reading the instructions up in the upper right hand side. So I'm speeding this up by 5x while I sit here and try to mess around with the so I decided like that would be fine. I'm trying to get further far enough away from the body of the craft there, so make that. And I took those blocks away. I was putting the blocks up one by one, so I delete the blocks and reassemble them as one piece. Let's make it slightly more efficient. So now I have a pattern. Let's sort of count out. So I'm going to drop a hinge or pivot. Need some more pivots. Now you get crazy with the pivots. You could actually have two pivots and make it move all sorts of weird directions, or pivot in a hinge, but we're just going to keep it somewhat simple. The one direction which is a little tougher to do with this configuration is going on side to side. Although you can imagine it like a 4-prop quadcopter and just say, well, we want to go side to side. We'll just have to tilt it, do a little roll, and move in that direction. Probably good practice for building a quadcopter. Do it underwater so you have a little more dampening of the moving around. All right, so we got, I'm using the X key so I can kind of center it a little bit on the cube there. There we go. Oh, one more. Now the prop size and configuration does matter. If you make it too large, for example, it will not work underwater. You get like zero propulsion from it. So you have to shrink it down a bit. I'm not sure how far to shrink it or if the default is okay. So I'm going to leave it as the default for now, and we get in the water, make some more. My suit ran out of water, so we'll dump in here for a little bit and let it fill up. Make another battery. We need some batteries for this thing. Planning on 3 high voltage batteries, 2 of which will be for the propellers, and 1 will supply energy for the drill and computer and stuff like that. And I'll put those in the center to sort of, and also give a little mass to the craft. This is one thing I like about adding a border around this. I can just drop these out and still have an outline. So I'm building a little spot for the mining drill. I'm just going to leave a hole. Well, I need 2 then. I need a mining drill and a anchor. So I'm going to actually have those in the middle, inside, basically, instead of having an anchor hanging off the end of the sub. It'll be, so that right there, about there, I'll have an anchor, and on the other side, I will have the drill. I'm sort of figuring out where the center of the craft is at. And I want to put one big piece in here. Given that this is a very small craft, I'm probably micro-optimizing the blocks. Keep going here for some more batteries. So initially, I actually will move this around. Initially, I put 1 battery dead center, and I put 2 more batteries on either side of it. Figured that would keep the center of gravity in the center there. Remove our little helper blocks. Now that we have the battery in the center point, we can work off of that. I go, that's not centered. Yep, that's why. One of my helper lines I didn't remove. Using the mouse wheel to sort of expand out that direction. And we got another battery. Let's make another one. Back in the water. Hopefully when they implement survival mode, the batteries will be empty, uncharged when you build them. This is sort of a exploit that you can build a battery and voila, yeah, power. So if you like run out of power in the middle of nowhere, you can just, with common or build another battery out of your suit and use it to get out of there. Yeah, I said this is going to be a wet sub. We're not going to enclose it and that. We're just going to sort of have a bottom platform here and go with that. I don't want to get too elaborate. We'll get a little bit fancier. So a little bit fancier. Now we have quite a few controls. Now here I'm going to play with the props. Name all the props. So basically I'm naming the props with the standard convention, except saying, in the previous one I had a wheel, rear, left, and right, and wheel, front. In this case, we prop, rear, left and right, and prop, front, left and right. Also have to name the pivots. So we'll name those at some point. And then I need to go back. I didn't do it in this video. I need to configure the pivots too and crank them all the way up so they move as fast as possible. There's a number of settings you cannot do through code. You have to do manually, which I guess is a reasonable thing to do. It's like in this case, you wouldn't want to be able to code change the size of the props, propellers. That would be a little bit unrealistic. As I build more stuff here. Now you may maybe wonder how I'm going to get this in the water. It's sitting on the, it's not anchored. And that's a good question. We'll have to see. Now, for a fancier sub, I would have retracting wheels. The wheels would basically come out. Like I can push them out in the shore, and once in the water, they'll retract into the body of the sub. Although I'm not sure if they're just hanging, if that makes a difference or not, performance-wise. Will definitely look cooler with them retracting. Here I am thinking about putting the anchor around the back for simplicity. So we definitely need one. And I changed my mind and go, well, that's not. That looks a little too weird. Fortunately, you remove components from a vehicle, you get everything back. There's no penalty for disassembling. Kind of deciding what I'm going to do here. So I have the 3 batteries laid out, and I want to put a mining drill in the back. But I decided that would put the mining drill too far to the rear and spoil the balance. And make another drill. Technically, I could pull the drill off the vehicle. We really don't need that vehicle anymore for this challenge. I just need to get some aluminum. There's no way you can climb the mountains for titanium, which I don't need. But we'll leave the vehicle there just to keep it there. But in this case, I could have just disassembled it for components. So this time, instead of just using a mini computer, I'm actually going to use a full computer. That gives me a display so I can at least render some information. We'll get a little more fancy. Well, the coding definitely will be fancier. We'll have more type of control mechanisms on here. As far as propulsion, we have a little more complicated, driving all the propellers in different ways. You know, if we want to yaw back and forth, we can just change the propellers in different directions and move it, swap it back and forth. Rotating is pretty simple. And if I want to, like, you know, bring the nose up of the sub, I can just use the props, the front props to sort of kind of angle up, and the rear props sort of angle down, and that would give us a nice little rotate up. And if we want to rotate down, you know, we do the opposite, and sort of like four-way steering, going up and down in a way. So we'll put that there. So still in the back, but it's not on the outside the sub. So slightly nicer. Still in that drill. So then we have a battery problem. So we'll basically take the that middle battery, and we'll put two side by side. And that way we'll keep the weight more or less in the center. And, you know, weights, we'll need the weight. So I think right now at this stage of the game, things are a little too floaty in the water. The components are really not heavy enough. One reason why you're using a wet sub, if you make a dry sub where you have the main area just have air, what you can do, you can contain that space, use a docking door, and empty out all the water. But that makes it too buoyant, and it takes a heck of a lot. You need actually lead or a heck of a lot to try to thing to sink at that point. So, but we're a wet sub, so we don't really care about that. Kind of thinking, yeah. So we have a little spot, and we'll fill in the middle there, and now I could just fill the floor in. The drill will go directly through the floor. So the drill and the anchor, I believe, will go right through that floor. So there's no real blocking. I think the rule is within a vehicle, nothing blocks anything. So, for example, you could tilt, you can have wheels on the bottom that rotate right through the floor with no hatch or open, just right to the floor if you wanted to. So you can do some pretty unrealistic things. My goal in all these series will be to avoid anything weird like that. So if I wanted to have wheels that came in from the bottom, I would leave an opening that would avoid any potential collisions, even though the game itself wouldn't prevent it. So what we'll do is we'll take these, mount those. So basically we'll have this drive the right side propellers, and another battery on the other side to drive the left side propellers, or should I say the port propellers, and so that's the starboard side. Okay. And we don't need any huge container for doing this. A small container is more than enough. We're not going to sit around long enough to fill a container. And even if we came close to that, I could just put it in my suit inventory. We don't need that much gold. It's a little bit of gold. And most likely we'll find uranium too, but we don't. No plans to really use any uranium in this series. Yeah, so just sort of, sorry, I'm going to do some of the connections here. So we have that connected, kind of route it around so we don't go through the battery there. So general goal, this video is, for episode 5 is just going ahead and, let's see, getting close to noon game time, but the rest of this episode 5 is all about building this sub. Episode 6 is going to be programming the sub and testing it. So we'll actually test all the props and controls while it sits on the ground here. So one thing I'm not sure, like if I invert the prop, I'm not sure if I can notice that. I mean, I guess let's look at the prop at default, and I guess if I invert the prop, it should be obvious that it's inverted. So, you know, for example, if I wanted to twist it, do a yaw left or right, then I can just have one set of props going in one direction, the other props invert, and then the whole thing kind of twist. Question is, if I just look at them, can I notice that it actually worked or not? Little platform for our computer. So that's the episode 6, is doing the software coding and testing the various commands and make sure all that works. And then if the coding goes quickly, then we'll work on getting this thing in the water. If not, that'll be episode 7. Hitting the water. Now, a cheesy way, which I probably will do to get in the water, I'll just toss some wheels on the bottom of it, and just, you know, have put the wheels just drive it right into the water, and then pop the wheels off once it's in there. The other way is to build a little crane, put a docking port on the top of it, make a crane to attach the docking port, and crank it around and then drop it in the water. It'll take a little more work to do that. So, and I need to create a crane anyway later on to pick up the cargo. So we'll probably just wait on the crane and just throw some wheels on there and drive it right into the water and pop the wheels off again. There's no reason to leave the wheels on there because I don't plan to bring it out of the water. I would need a ramp, set up a ramp system, so I can drive it off. Then for this vehicle, we'll just, once it hits the water, it's going to stay in the water. In theory, I can just find some place in the shallows and then anchor it, and then we can run a power line across and charge it back up from the shore. Yeah, you need a hard drive for the computer, something you don't need in creative mode. They pre-come with a hard drive. And not sure what the long-term planning here. I mean, I guess you can program the hard drive, pop it off, and put it somewhere else, or I guess you can replicate it or swap them, have different ones. Because the coding's so easy, you can just replicate the code. Well, if the program involves multiple files, then that'd be kind of a pain to kind of replicate all those files and things. And we'll just throw a router. We just need a simple mini router. We'll just toss it in the middle here. Try to use the X key to center it on the seat there. Okay, it's starting to look like something here. We got a seat, we got a computer. We're going to need some power converter, because we're going to tap off the that battery right behind the seat will be the power for all the other components. We'll need to run a line to the computer and run a line to the actually need to run the line to the computer, the router, to all the pivots need a power line to them too. And realize that my my seat is not in the center here. And which means my router is not in the center. I should have put some marker blocks down to make this a little easier. Probably just use my drone. If you hit F2, you get a small drone that's very small that gets around. And that probably a lot easier doing that to maneuver around to build things instead of trying to hop around. Yeah, drone definitely be easier. Now you notice there's like a little border, a little lip around this craft, and so one thing that doesn't happen currently, or it might not ever, is that if you have like an open boat, it still floods, even if the water level is below the sides. It'll still flood. You have to be completely enclosed. Now we need a low voltage junction to break off of that. Actually, we'll actually have to chain another one because we have 6 low voltage requirements, and this only gives us 4 of those. And notice that this is a longer video, almost an hour. And we'll connect that, and I go, that looks kind of a little too messy. What I need is some bridges. Yeah, the bridge is an interesting concept. I think that was a very interesting solution. I spent some time effing around with this too. So I initially, because I have the power, I also have a data cable I need to run. I'm sort of thinking, I got to run the data cable too. So we'll need some of those. And so what happened with the those bridges is that I run the cables within the sub right to the bridge, and then the bridge will have a connection over. So when the prop twists around, you just have a short cable that kind of follows it around. So it doesn't look as weird as having the really long cables being twisted and whatnot. Given how cheap propellers are, I could have gone with more of them. I could have put some side thrusters on here too. Just kind of go crazy with the propellers. I guess you only need, if I had 2 side propellers, one on left and right, to give you that easier side-to-side motion without tilting. It's not something you need that often. It'd probably be enough. Another thing is, you know, do they need a lot of clearance from the body of the ship itself to work well? You know, for example, if I had them embedded, or maybe created a tunnel through the ship, you know, and then so at least you would imagine the water would go through the tunnel, and it'd be sort of like the props would be embedded in the ship itself, so you couldn't really see them, but there's a hole going through the ship side by side, and so it would you know, look reasonably realistic as far as functionality. I'm kind of playing around the wires to get them settled the way I wanted to go. So then I realized that I put those on the wrong side. And I go, I'll fixing that. And I go here, and then data cable goes there, and yeah, it kind of crosses over. So maybe I should invert those two. Yeah, I'd build this again and definitely go a lot faster. Although I think we'll see how they actually perform. I kind of like the 4 props like that. And of course I just put back what I already had. And yes, I did a dumb thing. Let's go the other way. Okay, that looks a lot more reasonable. I don't mind the data cable hanging a little bit. The power cable's a little more solid there. But this is a really cool feature. I'm not sure if any other game has something like this for construction. And of course, you know, the cables are running across the deck of the ship here, the sub here. I could run those on. You can actually use a drone and run them inside the floor there. Here's something else I realized. They're on the wrong side. I need to put them on the other side. And okay, so I F around going, why won't this work? Why doesn't this work? I find it's perfectly fine. I don't get it. And the reason why is because I have symmetry on and the other side is blocking it. And being a noob, I didn't realize that. I do self-discover this at some point. Like, please work. Because I'm trying to fill that in so I can remove the other side, and then in some place I kind of look over and I go, oh, but not yet. And I go, well, that must be the fault. Let's remove that, or remove those, and you can't remove the hinge if there's something attached to it. Even though I remove that block, the prop is still logically or or physically attached to the hinge. So that if I move that hinge, that prop would move. So basically, as you attach things, there's a sort of a parent-child relationship, and it still doesn't work. At some point, I'll look up and go, "Oh, not yet, not yet." And this is all recorded after I film it. It just makes it easier to, if I need to pause or do something or want to record something I just made and messed up and start using swear words or something like that, I can just filter those out and re-record that section again. All right, so I think we're moving forward again here. Once again, I'm trying to have larger chunks, even though it doesn't really matter for a vehicle this big. Okay, got those right. And there's still this game is still just in alpha mode, so it's going to get, they got a lot of cool features lined up, and I know we've been driving the developer crazy with all the suggestions we've been putting on there for other cool things. The graphics are quite amazing. I think I'm a big believer of ray tracing now, at least for this type of game. Put our prop back, and I say, as I'm doing this, is that is now a child, effectively, of the pivot there, which makes the prop a child of the pivot. And this is important because say I remove that piece from the pivot, those blocks from the pivot to the prop, and I take some blocks and try to attach the propeller directly to the side of the ship. It's, even though it looks like it's attached directly to the side of the ship, it's not actually attached to the side of the ship. It's still connected to that pivot. And so I would look attached, you can then rotate it, and because it still has that relationship. And even like that, you try to delete the hinge, it won't pivot, it won't let you, because it still has that prop attached as a child. So you had sort of, from any kind of hinge, pivot, or track type device, a component, you have to remove all the sub things you've added to it if you want to move the parent there. Okay, now we're giving all the pivots name, and you notice that I don't change them here, but there, if you look down, you see there's a max speed and acceleration, rotation speed, max rotation speed and acceleration. And I'm going to crank those up. Unfortunately, speed I think only cranks up to 2 as high as it goes. I think acceleration is maxed out at 2 also. But and you can manually, there's a manual in the configuration, manually move it, which is nice to sort of figure out what direction is what. And it moves pretty darn fast. Because in the coding, I was going to have stuff like, okay, if you want to go up, rotate all the props facing up. Wait till they rotate. Once they finish rotating, then turn on the props and start moving up. Which makes the logic a little more complicated. But since they pivot so quickly, I'll probably go with something simple and just say rotate them and turn them on. Yeah, you'll get a little rear movement, but for like half a second, and then you'll start going up, and that's fine. Now we're doing our wiring. So we got one high power. So every prop needs one high power and one data, and every pivot needs low power and one data. Now the hinge part, the pivot's not a hinge, the pivot, part of the pivot that has the power and the data are in the inside, so they don't need bridges for that. Okay, computer, we got to connect to, try to get locked onto the floor there. And I said I could run that onto the floor, but I'm not going to bother doing that. We need to hook up our seat, and of course when we write the code, we'll define where that port is at. And then we'll run this into the router, and that gives the computer access to all the name components. And the router needs power. And the computer needs power. Trip hazard. Click there, get on the floor, click there, that core locks it in, and we'll route it over here somewhere, and that's good. And we got two more, and I have computer booted up. And we'll run the, as I said, the drill off that battery. So that drill will run way long enough so that the most leading battery will have plenty of power there, and we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. We're not going to get too fancy here. We're just going to drop it on here, and a fancier version would be we control the anchor and the mining from the seat, and then once you find a spot, you just hit the button, and it'll lock down the anchor, and then lock down the start the mining. There's currently no way to know if the anchor actually engaged. There's a suggestion put out for information to come back to say that the if you're on a vehicle or a build, you're on a build, this is a build, is the build anchored or not? If you anchor it and you type V on any of the blocks, it will tell you if it's anchored. So we'll call it static. It'll say it's a static build now. So it knows internally. It knows if it's static or not. And the suggestion was to expose that, and then that way we know for sure. So if we attempt to anchor, and then once we anchor, we check to make sure we actually are in static mode, then turn the drill on, for example. If we attempt to anchor and we don't, then we can put like a little red light indicator or something to indicate an error on the computer screen saying anchor request failed. Thanks for playing. And then you can move to a different location and try it again, because the seafloor is definitely hilly. Maybe when you get, at some point, I assume that it flattens out way out there. Okay, now the big wheels I'm making here, not sure if my audio software just took out the sigh I put in there. So the big wheels, first of all, I don't need big wheels. I could use normal size wheels. I could pull wheels off my vehicle. It was just temporarily, but I decided I'm going to make two big wheels. What I'm thinking about is dropping two wheels in the back and just have two wheels on. I have the front laying on the ground, and that should be enough to push it into the water. I got two power ports right there, and we'll just, I'm curious if that works. If not, I can put like two little wheels in the front and just have them free rolling and push it. It's not that far to go in the water. And in future, series, I'll basically ramp up how much fancier I get per thing I make, because in theory, as I build multiple subs, I'll get faster at building them. Thus, I can spend more time making them a little more interesting each time, versus me sitting here for 8 hours trying to figure out a wonderful sub build. And I figured the big wheels will come in handy for something else, so you always have something. But we're not going to put the wheels on yet. We're just sort of in general, what the goal is, I said before, is I just want to build the craft, not do any coding yet. And thus, I'm looking at I'm looking at it and go, well, I think I'm about ready. It's done. Even though I haven't gave the pivots any power or data, but I figured since I'm almost done here, I'll go ahead and print up some motors. What else do I need in the future? I'm not going to bother with ballast tanks and pumps and all that stuff for this build. I'm just going to manually toss concrete till it sinks, gets more or less into the water. And then once I mine as much as I mine, I'll drop the extra weight, bring it up the surface, and maybe turn it into, well, it can't. The props are too high off the water. I guess I can make the props bigger, and so if it floats on top of the water, and if I want to do surface travel, I can just go ahead and make the props bigger, reconfigure them, and just sort of like an airboat fly across the surface there. That'd be kind of interesting. Like build a boat that looks sort of like this design, but have the props up higher and bigger as a boat. Sort of an airboat with 4 props instead of one in the back with fins. And with that, you wouldn't need to rotate. You need to rotate the other direction, so they go in the rotate on the y-axis and spin around 360. And then that way, if you face them forward, you can reverse or go left and right and all that, and face them backwards and turn full bore and do that. Although, like this would work too, and then I guess so. We'll see. On the way back, first we have to get this thing built in the water, program in the water. Go someplace deep. Hope we don't drain the batteries dead. Okay, get power. Yep. Next time I'll use a drone and I'll hop around like a monkey here. Trying to line it up. I assume at some point they'll add symmetry for components too. I'm sure the developer's thing-to-do list is pretty darn long at this point. But the foundation is great. I mean, I've yet to crash it, and all the features that are there seem to work pretty well. And they're quite responsive. I've not filled if anytime somebody's had sort of a blocking bug, they fix that pretty quickly. Or they regress something. thinking about how small those wires are. I mean, a block is a quarter meter, and a half block, which you can use with X mode, is eighth of a meter. But if I put two wires that look like they're side by side, how far, or how many wires can I put side by side for a block? Are they 5 meters? I mean, 5 centimeters across? I have to play around with that and see what the I guess the grid pattern is for wires. It could be grid of 1 too. It might be able to put on any single. I guess that would be on any centimeter. So I can ask on the forum about that. Somebody probably knows. All right, so kind of looking at what we got in here. Kind of double checking, make sure I didn't make any boo-boos. So I think we are, I'll look at myself going, I think this is about done. I'll need to just change the configuration of the pivots a little bit to speed them up. But I think everything else, I can just get right to coding and start coding different sequences next episode. So we're about the end of this one. Hope you enjoyed me trying to fumble through trying to build a sub for the first time. And until next time, see ya.